Good morning and welcome to another edition of the Recruitment Reimagined podcast. Today I'm joined by the lovely Sara Thompson. Sara and I have known each other for a number of years. Sara currently is an independent freelance consultant but has many years as a service delivery director for both Hays and for a number of corporate clients. So good morning, Sara.
Good morning, Ian. Nice to see you.
You too. And we're obviously going to talk today a little bit about the talent acquisition side of the recruitment industry from the internal side, which is one of your areas of expertise. And you've worked a number of years, haven't you, in that space, I think now?
Yes. I can't imagine how many years, but in the corporate space, I've probably been doing that for a good 20, 25 years now. And through that time, obviously, there's been a lot of change in terms of the way TA functions and recruitment has evolved. And we're now in a very interesting space where it's moving ever quicker.
Wow. So based on your experience leading these large-scale talent acquisition functions, and do you believe there is a risk to the in-house talent acquisition teams if they fail to embrace AI over the next 3, 4, 5 years?
Absolutely. So there's the number one issue, I believe, for the in-house teams is actually identifying the candidates and getting candidates to the business as quickly as possible, which is always the aim. And if they don't embrace AI, the actual issue will be they won't be able to find the candidates at all because they'll get snapped up by competitors. If you're not using AI to search and scrape the internet for both active and the passive candidates, you'll miss out on huge swathes of talent. When you get to the next stage, if your candidate experience isn't up there with all the competitors and all the large recruitment organizations, then once again, the candidates will drop off. They won't complete the process with you. And if your organization were to grow quickly and you needed to scale, it's really a long-term strategy to add more recruiters. Whereas if you've got the tech and the AI behind you, it's much more simple to scale an organization quickly. So in essence, unless it's embraced in all organizations, they're going to struggle with time to fill their positions and the quality of their candidates.
Wow. So in your experience, because I mean, forgive me, I do know the answer to this, or I think I know the answer to this, but you worked very briefly or not briefly, you worked for Amex, didn't you, as their client talent acquisition director. So without giving client confidentiality away, and you've worked with a number of other customers across the space, are we talking stuff that's happening theoretically, or are businesses already doing this at scale?
So it's 10 years since I worked for American Express.
Yeah.
And I had a super forward-thinking leadership in Amex.
Yeah.
2 powerhouse women who were my boss and my boss's boss, who were seriously ahead of their time.
Yeah.
And even then, we were looking at ways which we piloted and some of them we implemented to identify candidates. So one of the things we looked at was candidate assessment.
Yeah.
And we tried a number of methodologies, and one of them was getting candidates who were going to be customer service people to play a game to determine whether they could. I mean, this was gamification, and this was 10, 11 years ago, right?
Wow.
That was good. Leading edge at that point.
Yeah.
And actually what we found at that point, it was too soon. Candidates felt like we were making a joke of them, asking them to play a game to determine whether they were suitable or not. It wasn't that the tool didn't work. It was that culturally, people weren't ready for it.
Yeah.
It also put in bias because the younger people were very able to play the games, whereas actually at that point we were looking for people who were returning to work or some people slightly older, and they just looked at the game and went, ooh. which made it really tricky. And we also used, and this is real life, we used another tool that was a predictive analytics tool, again for the customer service folk. And that was a really interesting tool because what it did was it didn't look at past experience. It looked at things like whether you were good at sport, whether you were, a variety of different factors that normally when you're looking for a customer experience person, you might not check. And it was fascinating. And we hired a whole cohort purely based on the predictive analytics tool to see, and then compared them against a cohort that was selected in the normal way. And they used to go into training, and then we measured them moving forward. And there were...
Yeah, go on. I'm fascinated.
I haven't told you this before, have I? And there were some really interesting elements of it. And it did broaden the pool of candidates significantly. And just, they weren't all successful. So there was some work on the tool. But it meant we got some really interesting people into the business that would never have got past. Well, their CV would have been rejected before they ever spoke to the recruiter.
Wow, fascinating. But coming up to today, real life now, you've just been involved with a client, helping them do an acquisition of a new
RPO provider.
Yeah. So you've actually got real life experience of what is actually out there right now and what people are offering. And we can't name names of corporates or corporate suppliers, should we say? But this is no longer theoretical from what you're telling me. This is actually live.
Absolutely not. I mean, so we can start at the beginning. So what's the first thing you do is let's talk in recruitment terms, not in, because we could go back still further to determine who they need and when they need them. So workforce planning. But let's start at the start of the recruitment process. So you and I, we all know in recruitment that it's really important to get the job specification right, and that the job spec and the job advert are two different things. I don't suppose there is a recruiter out there who does not use a form of AI to write their adverts. I'll be astounded. Or to write their communication to the candidates. So that's already there. But there's then a lot more. In terms of the sourcing tools, they are extremely clever now. And the way in which you deep dive the internet, for want of a better description, to get to those candidates, it's in place in each one of those large recruitment organizations. They all have the tech to do the sourcing.
And one question, because when we talked offline last week about something, you said to me the objective, the target for an in-house talent team is to fill 95% of their internal requirements. 95. And
that's whether they are working with an RPO provider.
Yeah.
Or whether they have their own team. That would be what they would be aiming for, is 95%. If the client is generous, they might let you have 90%, but they're expecting 95%. So you can't say, this requisition's a little tricky, let's not give this a whirl. This is right, okay, how are we going to find this one?
Right.
And as you and I both know, Ian, recruitment isn't just about putting a search string into the internet and hoping for the best. So that's the AI element of it. Yes, you can do that. But actually, for those really tricky ones, it's going to be, this is where AI isn't. It's the relationships now. So there's a blend of, you need the tools and the technology to present you with the potential candidates, but it's what the recruiter does with them next that determines whether you actually have a viable candidate to share with a client or hiring manager.
And just to be clear, so there'll be a lot of niche recruiters out there who might be a bit shocked by what you just said there in terms of that stat, 95. That is 95% filled by the internal recruitment team, not using third parties.
Not using third parties.
Right. Okay.
So
I know what you meant, but I just want to make sure we're clear on that. So coming back to what you just told us about all of this stuff that's going on, workforce planning and predictive. I mean, we're kind of moving away from the original question, but this is fascinating stuff. So AI, you would see large corporates, the MSP and RPO providers, as embracing AI at speed now in order to maintain that 95. Because if they don't, from what you've just said, then
there'll be financial penalties.
There'll be financial penalties, and they won't be achieving that 95, and the potential will lose the contract.
Correct.
And these contracts are worth, well, you and I both know,
multi-million pounds.
Yeah. I mean, I can talk about one that we won for Foreign and Commonwealth Office, because it's good 10, 15 years ago, and that was 11 million. You know, so I know
that will have been 11 million over a period of 3 to 5 years.
No, that was 11 million they spend a year, sort of thing.
Oh,
but
right. Okay.
Nevertheless, and that was more MSP than RPO. But yeah, some of the contracts for the large corporates, you know, are 100 million or whatever over a period of time. Absolutely. Fascinating. Really good stuff. So let me ask you another question then. Which areas of talent acquisition, of the talent acquisition function, so screening, sourcing, pipelining, onboarding, do you see as being the most disrupted by AI? And where do you think in-house teams are likely to get the adoption journey wrong?
Yeah, that's an interesting question. Now, adoption of any tool, of anything, it doesn't matter if it's AI or something different, you are going to get resistance to change. And when it's something really new and innovative, you get much more. Right. And I think both you and I know that the first step in combating that is training. Isn't really the right word. They do need to be trained, but it needs to be drip fed. It's more of a communications and education as opposed to true training. And where it goes wrong is if you try and implement it too quickly without getting the buy-in from the people who are going to have to be engaged with it, they will resist it. And as soon as you have resistance, you're pushing water uphill, and it makes it much, much more difficult to implement. I mean, I found it across my career. I'm a very impatient person. Anyone who knows me will know that. So when I have an idea, I want it done now. As I've got older, what I've discovered is I get it done much more quickly if I take that time to explain, acknowledge people's concerns, talk it through, personalize to individuals or sections of the community how and what the impact is going to be and how I expect it to work. And then, as you and I both know, the most difficult bit is actually listening to their objections and not just saying, no, that's wrong, even if that in your heart is what you believe, because actually, by not listening to the objection, of which there will be many, and addressing it genuinely, and actually maybe also thinking, oh, have I missed something here? Being humble enough to think, okay, actually, they might have a point here. Years ago, I worked with an organization who put out a tagline on every job advert they had. It came from the US and was rolled out everywhere. In Germany, they said, no, this isn't going to work here.
Das funktioniert nicht.
This won't work here. It was totally ignored. They just got someone to translate the phrase. And guess what? It was considered insulting in that country. And you have to, the trickiest part of it is listening to what they say and then understanding, is this a lack of understanding and resistance to change, or have they actually got a point here? And that is where then, particularly with AI, so they'll throw everything at you when you start implementing these trickier things. They'll tell you legislatively you can't do it in that country. Culturally, it's not okay. It won't work here. We don't do it like this. I can't tell you how many times I've heard that throughout my career. And you have to unpick it and understand, will it really not work there? Or are they just resistant to change? And that actually, particularly with AI, because everybody is sensitive, they think they're going to lose their jobs. They think they're going to lose the personal touch that comes with recruitment. But really what we're looking for here is to keep the blend of the human touch underpinned by the AI capability.
So from your experience, do leading global talent acquisition teams, how do cultural, regulatory, and ethical considerations, particularly across EMEA, how does that impact the successful use of AI?
Well, the regulatory ones are the really important ones. So
Okay.
if you're in a large corporate, obviously, when I say this, you're going to know you can't do it in a smaller organization. In a large corporate, you have to engage the local legal counsel. You absolutely have to engage them. If you're a smaller organization, but you have locations across EMEA, you would engage with a local lawyer. You would not take a risk here, because you might think in the EU the law applies the same in each country. It doesn't. And if you're sat somewhere like the UK or the US, you might easily think, oh, that's the EU, it'll be the same everywhere. It absolutely is not.
Yeah.
So that's the regulatory. The second point with the regulatory, if we talk EMEA, and I mean the Middle East, where there isn't where the government can just make laws at will, they change them at will. So you need to have somebody who absolutely understands that today the law has changed, or you're going to get into deep water. Saudi Arabia is renowned for making legislative changes very quickly.
Wow.
So
and you experienced that then, obviously, without naming a customer, where a law has changed and you've had to totally change your processes.
Correct. So if you don't have someone who's absolutely on top of that, you're going to be, and it's not only that the law changes, it's the interpretation of the law. So is your understanding of the law exactly how they're expecting it to pan out? Because it isn't always the same. So
that can happen in the UK, and but I mean, we can have case law. I mean,
yeah, which makes it different.
Yeah, I mean, we had this whole thing last week where the Supreme Court was ruling on the loans to do with car sales. So
Correct.
there's a whole implication of that. Okay, that's interesting. And what about the cultural and ethical side of things then?
Yeah, and that so obviously you have to stay within the law. The next piece is culturally what is okay. So so let's say you're having, I'm going to go real old school now, but you would do it online. Let's say you're going to have an open day.
Yeah.
And what you'd find is in different countries, you'd get different responses. Well, the same applies to AI. Some countries are forward thinking and will embrace it. And some countries are more conservative and cautious. So in the UK, I would say we're middle of the road. So in the US, they embrace it. In the UK, we're embracing it with a little caution.
Right. Okay.
Europe, and I'm generalizing now, tends to be more cautious.
And is that the same North and Southern Europe?
No, it isn't.
It was a follow-up question if you'd said yes, because my experience is the Northern Europeans are slightly more aligned to our thinking. The Southern Europeans can be a lot more cautious and a lot more conservative.
Correct. That's exactly where I was going with that. But it's very generic, and you might find, so for example, I did a lot of work at a previous client in Romania, and Poland, actually, and both those countries embrace technology. They're keen, and I don't know if that's because they have quite a young population, so a lot of people are young. The working professional, I don't actually know what the numbers are, but they're all mid-30s and younger, and therefore they've grown up with it. I don't know if that's why. Whereas in Germany, for example, probably there's an older working population. So yes, and you have to listen to your teams is going to be my. So do you?
You're on the ground recruiting teams in those countries,
or if we don't have you don't always have an on-site, on the ground recruiting team, but the hiring managers will be able to guide you.
And have you seen any tech with the RPOs or even the corporates where they've implemented AI, which is supporting this process, which is helping this process?
In what way? You mean helping so that it can be adapted according to the demands of or the need of the country, or so most of the right. So that's one of the things you have to check. Not all AI products are global.
Okay.
So
good.
Just because you've got a product that works fantastically in the UK, that doesn't mean it'll work everywhere.
Okay.
And you have to be mindful. That is actually, I have seen that not work. So you get the supplier in this instance, they demonstrate something to you, you go, fantastic, that's amazing. Yeah, we'll have it. They go to roll it out and they get to Poland, Romania, Germany, whichever the country is, and they go, but it won't work here because we're not allowed to scrape the internet like that here because of the legislation. Or, it won't work especially well there because people don't like video interviews. They would prefer a phone call.
And as we both know, in Germany, LinkedIn is not the dominant business social network. There's a German
Zing. It's called Zing.
Yeah.
It's like Glassdoor. Glassdoor is, and your Glassdoor rating. But in Germany, I don't know if it's still true. It used to be something called Kununu. And you have, but most of the tech, because of the way it works, can interface with any of those.
It can. I mean, we're getting into some real techie stuff, and today I'm really interested in strategy and what is going on out there and stuff like that. I mean, and our listeners will be fascinated by some of, because you're talking about real life. You're not talking theoretical. You're talking about stuff you've actually done and seen.
I mean, let's use an example of stuff that we all have access to. Well, not all, but anyone in work will have access to this. So you will know that on Teams, it will record your conversation and so that you've got written notes. And actually, currently, you could then cut and paste those notes into Copilot or ChatGPT, and it will summarize it for you. Now, that's an amazing tool because, as we all know, when you're having a conversation like we are, if I was trying to annotate it at the same time, I'm going to miss key things because I'll get really interested in what you're saying, stop writing. I will probably remember the key things.
Right.
But let's say tomorrow I'm sick and my colleague is picking it up and I haven't written it down, they won't know. So there's some really great AI software that takes, let's say you're the client and I'm the recruiter, will take our intake notes down, put it into whatever format we have decided, and it's an accurate representation of what we said. It will automatically upload it onto the ATS. So tomorrow when I'm not here, my recruiter colleague is looking, they can see an exact representation. Equally, when I'm doing the screening with the candidate, same thing. So I haven't forgotten anything and all the information is there.
Wow.
And that's available to all of us now, pretty much.
Right. Wow.
It's not utilised by all, but it's available to
Well,
all.
oddly enough, earlier in one of the other podcasts, we had a guy called Toby on who runs his own recruitment agency. Toby's very open about this. He's slightly dyslexic, and he's been using what you call a note taker for 12, 18 months. The interesting thing was he's only had one person out of several hundred who wasn't happy that he used a note taker, which was interesting. So culturally, it's becoming acceptable. And he uses the note taker for the reasons you've said. Because he is slightly dyslexic, handwriting notes means his concentration level is even lower than yours or mine would be, because he can't notate things as readily. He's like, how do I spell that word? So the note taker does all of that, and he's also created a workflow. Originally it was using Zapier, but now it's using another tool that literally just takes the conversation, edits, and puts it straight into his CRM. In fact,
exactly, and it's not only more accurate, it saves time. So as you go through the recruitment journey, all the admin elements of it can be taken away and are more efficient and more effective. There isn't a I can't imagine a disadvantage to it. Normally, if someone's uncomfortable with it, everybody has the right to see any data that is saved about them. So you can always just send it to them and say, please just confirm this is what we said. There shouldn't be an instance where they don't like it. I mean, let's talk interview scheduling. I pretty much most organizations who do any recruitment use an interview scheduler.
Yeah.
That works really well for the person who's interviewing and the candidate. They can pick and choose their times. I mean, where it doesn't work so well is where you have normally senior people in an organization who just block their whole calendar and their exec assistant manages it for them. And then it doesn't work so well because you can't just do it. But really, at that level, you tend to need the human interaction anyway. So, but interview schedulers work amazingly.
I mean, you're kind of moving on to one of the questions I wanted to ask you, which is, so as AI accelerates faster candidate matching and deeper talent insights, what percentage of the recruiter's role do you believe will still be human-led by 2030? And what capabilities will define a high-impact talent acquisition professional in that world?
Well, in my view, the number one thing is relationships, whether that be with the candidate, the hiring manager, the HR team, the procurement team, whoever your stakeholder is. Because the most important thing there is actually empathy. And unfortunately, AI is not great at empathy. They're also not great. I mean, think about the recruitment.
It's not the right word. It's just not empathetic. It's a large language model. So it doesn't understand.
No, it's not very good. The other thing is, like, if you were doing like a salary negotiation, it wouldn't understand all the softer elements of what's important to that candidate. So it might not be money. So money isn't always the negotiation. Well, it's almost never the negotiation point. It might be number of days holidays. It might be healthcare insurance for their family. It might be, and as you build a package, you know what the standard is. But if you really want that candidate, you might need to flex somewhere. AI not so good, because they're it's not. Complex decision making, not that great. It might be by 2030, but it's got a way to go. Adapting to change, not that great. So there's strategic planning. It can help you, but it doesn't do it for you. So I think I mentioned earlier, I think it's a blend of human insight and AI capability or technology. So our recruiter in that instance is now not doing admin at all, really. And now quite a lot of, so the recruitment coordinator in organizations, I don't think we'll need much of them. But that ability to understand people and influence is the strong point.
What you're describing, therefore, is a change in the human or the skills that human will need in the future. In other words, the person today and the person in 5 years' time will need different core competencies and
Correct.
behavioral skills. I mean, you're pointing towards a greater emphasis on what we call nowadays emotional intelligence, the ability to build empathy, to do good rational thinking, to understand the feelings of what, and that's the bit that comes through in everybody I talk to is AI doesn't understand human feelings. As you put it a minute ago, if a candidate is offered a £10,000 salary increase and it's got a shorter commute, then it would not understand why the candidate is still not considering taking the offer, because on the basis that the tangibles are better. But if the candidate was to say, well, actually, I don't get the feeling that my career is going to go forward, and I don't have that bond with the hiring manager or my line manager, then we'd all immediately get that. Whereas,
yes, that's a really key one, Ian. It's cultural fit. So
yeah.
I haven't mentioned cultural fit, and I don't think it's the buzzword of the moment. But the reality of it is the recruiter and the hiring manager, actually, in this instance, and you're not allowed to really say this these days, but gut feel accounts for a lot. But gut feel, if you analyze it, isn't gut feel. What it is has this person got the ability to fit with the existing team? Will they be able to bring something to that team that the other team members don't have?
Yeah.
Because you don't actually, we went on a course together years ago. What you don't want is a team full of people who are all the same. And that is what AI will try and do, right?
Yeah.
But actually, you need a bit of difference in your team. We mentioned slightly earlier offline about diversity. And what I mean here isn't traditional diversity, I mean diversity of thought. And AI isn't that clever yet. And I don't think by 2030 it will be either. And it's that, will this person thrive in our organisation? And will the organisation benefit from having this person in their midst?
And then it's fascinating because when you start talking about that, we're in August, the new football season's about to start. All of the teams are buying in new players, and you can see the top teams, the really top 3 or 4 teams, how much effort and energy they put into making sure that their new signing fits in and blends in. And ironically, I was reading an article today about the new players that Liverpool have bought, and they're one of the top 3. They won the Premier League last year. They just bought quite a few new players, and there's an article in something called The Athletic, which is a journalist magazine owned by the New York Times, that is just about sport. And it's a fascinating article to the depths to which Liverpool have gone to integrate these new players. And the agents, are saying that they are the best in the world, if not one of the best. And you think, well, that translates onto the pitch, doesn't it? And, you're talking about something similar, but we don't see it when a large corporate, NatWest Bank or Sainsbury's or Tesco's, brings on a new team. But that's what you're talking about here. AI can't do that. That's what.
No, AI can't.
Yeah. Yeah. Fascinating. Oh, it's brilliant. I love talking about this. So looking ahead, probably the final question really, what do you believe niche recruitment business will need to do to stay strategically relevant to in-house talent leaders in this new AI-powered world?
Yes. So I guess it's the thing. So we talked about the fact that in this new world, if everything goes as you would expect, 95% of all hiring will be done in-house. So how is our niche recruiter going to fit into that?
That's my question.
Yeah. So how are they going? Yeah, I know. It's your question. Actually, I have a lot of experience with what I would call boutique or niche recruiters. So the first thing is you really actually have to be niche, and you have to be looking at what skills are hugely in demand. So it will be related to it'll be tech, it'll be climate change, it will be those kind of skill sets. How do you make energy more efficient? You know, all those things that are key, and they will have to be extremely niche. They will not be looking for customer service representatives. That's not what they'll be doing. And with that nicheness means that they will need to have a deep understanding of the candidate skills, both their soft skills and their technical skills, and the ability to transfer existing skills, because as the world changes, they might not have the exact skills, but they'll need to have skills that are transferable. And the recruiter or the niche recruitment consultancy will need to understand their candidates properly to be able to represent them. They will also need to be able to understand the business, and then at the next layer down, the hiring manager for which they are recruiting. But that matching now becomes a lot of EQ, empathy, influencing, and really being able to get to those candidates quickly. So whilst they will also need the AI to scrape the databases and whatever it is in 2030, I think their networking and relationships will be key. So if we talk about, let's talk about contractors for now. They'll know who's finishing, what they want to do next. For permanent, they will have long-term relationships with people who have been in a job 2 to 3 years. Maybe it hasn't gone according to plan. Maybe they need, and they will be keeping in touch with those people. They will have that personal connection, so that the candidate wants to speak to them first, because all these big organizations will be able to find that candidate via the internet without doubt. They'll have a footprint somewhere that will make them visible, but it's how they are presented and packaged,
and the
relationship. Yeah.
Interesting. There's a question that, as you talk to me, it comes to mind from, I interviewed a guy on a podcast called James Crawford earlier in the series. James is of the opinion that recruitment as an industry will be at the forefront of organizational change in the future. And we, as the recruiters, will be at the sharp end. And his theory is, as he explains it very simply, if a business loses 3 people today, they won't go out into the market and recruit the same 3 people and the same 3 skill sets, because they'll take the opportunity to rewrite their job descriptions and think, well, that bit of that role, we can do all of that now with AI. And that bit of that role we can augment with AI. So actually, we're not looking for 3 people. We're looking for probably 1, maybe 2. And the role description is no longer the same. So those recruiters that have been out there now for 20 years, Sarah, you and I know who they are, and they literally find a high value skill and then they just run around selling it to the highest bidder. In the new world, they're going to struggle, because people aren't looking for, we just lost Fred, we want another Fred. They're looking for somebody different. And that is true consultancy. Now, that's his view. And I'm fascinated, given what you just said, to think, do you think he's got a point? Do you think he's right?
I think there's a blend there, because what I actually think is organizations will be doing a review of their organizational design.
Yeah.
They are also going to look at their top people,
yeah,
and say, right, whilst this person's job isn't exactly as it needs to be,
yeah,
they've got the capability of changing, of learning. So there will be investment in training.
yeah.
And that will actually, because so then you also need to look at retention analytics.
Yeah, yeah.
Why are people leaving? Now, are they leaving because they can't adapt? Are they leaving, and we had a conversation about this earlier, because they're not resilient enough to face the change?
Yeah.
So I think actually you can use AI to look at your retention or lack of retention analysis, look at the ones that are staying and why,
Yeah.
and you need more of those, right? So I'm not sure the recruiter will be the critical thinker here.
Right. Okay.
I think the HR and org design people will be.
Yeah.
The
blend between, because
but there needs to be the talent insights and the so it's a blend. It's that my experience is in many organizations there is not a true partnership between the HR departments and the TA, whether that's in-house or not. And if they don't have that genuine partnership, they aren't getting the best that they could. But I still suspect what will happen is we will be served as recruiters with a this is what we need, as opposed to being asked to contribute to that.
And I think what you're kind of saying by the answer to all those questions, that if I'm a niche recruiter and I don't change and I don't have a strategic plan as to where I need to be, then, in 2 or 3 years' time, I may find there is no future for my business.
Correct. You need to, well, actually, whether you're a large recruiter, a niche recruiter, or a SME or corporate, if you don't embrace this change, you're going to get left behind. And if you can't attract top talent, your business isn't going to be doing so well.
Okay.
In summary.
No, Sarah. I mean, that's, okay. And you said to me, I can be quite direct. Well, that's a direct answer to a direct question. And thank you, because it leaves no room for any doubt as to where you see going. And I'll be honest, 100% agree. I've not actually heard anybody come back with anything different. So, Sarah, thank you so much for your time.
Thank you, Ed.
I look forward to seeing you again in person next time, face to face. But for now, bye-bye. Thank you.
Bye-bye.